In the very west of Winterhold, along the jagged coastline of the Sea of Ghosts, sits a solitary beacon against the ice. Frostflow Lighthouse was designed to guide ships through the frozen rock-strewn waters of the north, and from a distance, it appears entirely unremarkable. Aside from its location, the structure seems peaceful, a standard feature of the landscape that might be found in the coastal region of Skyrim or in real life. However, the moment you enter the vicinity, the silence feels heavy. The first indication that something has gone wrong is right at the entrance. A horse lies dead in the snow. Nearby, a cart sits abandoned, laden with iron traps which are heavy, spring-loaded jaws, usually reserved for mountain predators or the common skeevers that plague northern cellars. At a glance, the scene lacks the typical hallmarks of a bandit or a predator's kill. There are no bloodstains on the snow, no arrows lodged in the wood, and no signs of struggle. The animal is cold to the touch, its hide stiff from the frost. This leads to an initial logical assumption. Perhaps the owner was in a desperate hurry. They may have arrived during the blizzard, rushing into the warmth of the lighthouse and neglected to stabilize the animal. In the brutal temperatures of the Sea of Ghosts, such an oversight is a death sentence for a horse. The presence of the stables just a few yards away makes this neglect even more striking. The horse was left hitched to its burden, exposed to the elements with its shelter stood empty. Looking close at the cart, the cargo tells a specific story. These are not tools of a merchant or a traveler. They are tools of a man expecting a pest problem. The traps are brand new, purchased recently to deal with something encroaching on the home. If the horse died of the cold because its owner was in a rush to get inside, what was waiting for them behind the door that made the survival of their only means of transport relevant? The absence of violence outside is a sign that the threat came from within. The horse didn't die because of an assault, but it died because its owner was too distracted by the horror unfolding inside to remember it existed. The moment you step through the door, the theory of a peaceful lighthouse vanishes. The expectation of a warm, hospitable house is immediately replaced by a cold, unwelcoming sight. The entire main hall is spattered with blood. It is on the stone walls, the floor, and the furniture. This is not an old crime scene. The fire is still burning in the hearth, and the bread has not yet gone stale. In the center of the room lies the biggest crime scene. A woman lies spot dead on the floor, stripped of all her clothes. A strange, jagged axe crafted from the insect chitin lies next to her. Despite the violence, the room's valuables are untouched. This was not a robbery. Across the room, near the fireplace, lies the carcass of a chorus, a giant venomous insect. Upon closer inspection of the carcass, you notice a woodcutter's axe to bring it down. It seemed like when he rushed inside, he could see a chorus lurking in. Being unprepared, he took the nearest weapon and killed the beast. The presence of this insect is simply an ecological contradiction. Chorus are said to be creatures that should be located deep underground, typically in the presence of a farmer. Yet finding it here out of all places so near the ground level is like finding a deep-sea predator in a mountain cabin. According to the law, chorus are giant venomous insects that usually inhabit the deepest, lightless reaches of Skyrim's underground. They are almost never seen on the surface. These creatures are the primary livestock and war beasts of the farmer or the betrayed elves who live in the dark. Finding one here in a coastal lighthouse designed for sun and sea indicates that something is wrong in this lighthouse. Somehow, the nightmare below has reached the surface. The jagged axe near the woman is crafted from the very chitin of these insects, proving that the attackers were not just animals, but someone who could wield a weapon. And looking at the axe, it's safe to confirm that the axe belonged to a farmer. The woman on the floor is Ramati, the matriarch of the family. The fact that she was stripped of her clothing adds a dehumanizing layer to the scene, suggesting that her killers viewed her as a little more than harvest. Near her body, the first piece of the puzzle emerges, a journal belonging to her husband, Habt. The journal reads, After years of sailing from Hammerfell to Solstheim and back, Ramati and I have finally saved enough money to buy that old lighthouse we spotted on the coast, and we are moving in next month. These Nords really know how to live. It may be cold, but you can't beat the tranquility of the watching icebergs to live out your silver years. Ramati loves the place too, despite the occasional leaking ceiling. Mani and Sudi unfortunately seem miserable here. I know the kids are old enough to strike out on their own, but I hope they'll grow to love the peace and quiet here as I have. Mani and Sudi continue to bicker and harass each other, and they seem to have started in on their mother as well. Ramati keeps finding things missing from the cellar. Sudi said she heard a noise down there, but Mani just thinks their mother is going mad from isolation. The very thought of it is ridiculous. She's always wanted to retire here. Sudi keeps saying that she hears scratching coming from the cellar at night. I think she's just trying to get her mother's goat, but I'd better head into town to get a few traps, just in case it's skeevers. Should only take a couple days. I just hope those two go easy on Ramati while I'm gone. Oh gods, why? I returned home to find my beautiful Ramati killed, and this thing, this horrible bug-like creature ransacked our home. I managed to kill the damned thing. I think it might be a Daedra. I've never seen anything like it. Oh god, poor Ramati. It must have come out from the cellar. I'm going down there and locking the door behind me to make sure they don't escape. I don't know if they'll make it out, but I have to save my family. Habd. This journal begins with the pride of a man who has finally achieved a lifelong goal after decades of labor on the sea. For Habd, the lighthouse was more than a building. It was a sanctuary where he and Ramati could grow old in what is called Nordic tranquility. However, this peace was undermined by domestic friction. The journal highlights a growing tension within a family as the children, Mani and Sudi, resented their isolation. This internal conflict created a dangerous distraction, causing the parents to misinterpret the first signs of a subterranean invasion as mere family bickering or the sounds of common pests. The central tragedy of the journal is Habd's fatal miscalculation of the threat. When Ramati noticed items missing and Sudi reports scratching in the walls, Habd viewed these through a lens of mundane problems. By blatantly labeling these noises as skeever infestation, he effectively left his family defenseless. His departure to town to purchase traps explains the presence of the horse and cart outside. He had rushed back only to probably see his wife being slaughtered by a farmer. Upon finding Ramati's body and the chorus, which is a creature so alien to him, he could only describe it in the journal as a Daedra. Habd realized the breach had come from the cellar. His journal ends by him making a bold decision to enter the cellar and to look into the threat by descending into the dark and lock the door behind him so that he could contain the threats that was deep within. There is a profound sadness in this particular story that sets it apart from the rest of the game. Imagine saving up your entire life, working through years of labor on the sea, just to finally buy your dream home. You experience your dream life for a few months, thinking you have finally found safety, only to return from a simple errand and find your wife dead on the floor. It's a cruel irony that the very place Habd thought to protect his family became the instrument of their destruction. The Nordic tranquility he craved was a thin veil that was turned aside. When he locked the cellar door behind him, it was just a tactical choice to contain the monsters. He did not go down to win or be heroic. It was a desperate act to save his children from the horrors to come. The investigation now shifts from the main hall to the rest of the living quarters. While the central room tells the story of the breach, the side rooms hold the evidence of how the family lived during those final paranoid days. In the children's room, you find the journal of Sudi, which reads, "I hate it here. Why did we have to move to Skyrim anyway? I missed the big port cities. There was always something to do and new people around. Or even being cabin girl on one ship we used to sail on would be better than this. Mani says we should run away, but I can't leave mother and father alone out here. Oh, what to do? We've been here for 2 months now, and there is nothing to do." From the top of the lighthouse, we can see all the way to the college at Winterhold. But Father says that magic is for Daedra worshippers. The only interesting thing to have happened lately is that Mother snapped at us at dinner and accused us of stealing things out of the cellar. I did hear scratching down there the other night, but I thought it was just Father cleaning fish. I caught Manny in the cellar a couple of days ago, going through some of the barrels and crates. At first I thought it was him, all along, making those scratches to play a trick on me. But I heard them again last night, and Manny was in bed. Father finally said he would go get some traps and poison from town in case it's skeevers. I'm really scared. It doesn't sound like skeevers to me. Manny won't listen. He thinks I'm just making up the noises and keeps sneaking into the cellar. Oh, why is he so stupid sometimes? I don't know why he keeps going down there, but I found the cellar key he copied and hid it in Mother's favorite keepsake, so he won't find it. The scratching is getting louder. Sudi's writing proves the most grounded and terrified perspective in the house. While Hubd was blinded by the pride of home ownership, and Manny was focused on his own escape, Sudi was the only one truly listening. She describes the scratching as a growing presence. The most unsettling detail in her entries is the theft from the cellar. Ramati had begun accusing the children of stealing food and supplies, a conflict that further isolated the family members from one another. In reality, this seems to be the first stage of the invasion. The most likely culprits, which are the farmers, were not just tunneling, they were scavenging. They were coming up into the cellar at night, taking what they needed and retreating back into the dark before anyone woke up. Sudi's realization that she heard the scratching while Manny was in bed is the moment the skeever theory should have died. It confirms that the threat was external, sentient, and already inside the perimeter. There is a tragic irony in Sudi's decision to hide the cellar key. She found the copy Manny had made and tucked it inside her mother's favorite urn on the mantle. She did this to protect her brother, to keep him from sneaking into the basement she knew was dangerous. In her attempt to save him from his own curiosity, she accidentally ensured that when the breach finally happened, the family was divided. The cellar became a one-way door. By the time you arrive, that key is still sitting in the urn, a silent witness to a sister's failed attempt at protection. Hidden under one of the beds, you can find a final piece of evidence from the brother's perspective. It is a letter from Manny that reads, "Sudi, I know you've been making up all that stuff about the noises in the basement to try to get me to stay, but I'm only waiting till Father gets home so you and Mother are safe. You could always come meet up with me before I head back to Hammerfell. Take care of yourself, little sister. Manny." This letter reveals that Manny was in total denial. He had convinced himself that Sudi was inventing the horror just to keep him from leaving for Hammerfell. It is a deeply human reaction, believing that the monster under the floor is just a sibling's trick, because the alternative is too terrifying to face. Despite his skepticism, there is a flicker of the protector in him. He was waiting for Habd to return, believing he was the one keeping the women safe, while the real danger was already breathing beneath his feet. He was planning a future in a distant land, completely unaware that his journey would end less than 100 feet from there, where he wrote those words. Moving into the parents' bedroom, on the nightstand and a small table near the door, you can find 2 volumes of books concerning Daedra. While he publicly dismissed the stretching as skeevers to maintain a facade of safety for Ramati, the presence of these texts suggests he was privately entertaining much darker theories. He wasn't just researching common pests, he was also studying the supernatural. It is possible that he suspected them from the beginning, that the sounds in the walls were not mundane. Yet, he might have quickly dismissed the theory. Near the bed, there are several potions of resist cold. They tell us of how poorly this Red Guard family was adapted to the biting environment of the Sea of Ghosts. They were outside, struggling against the very air they breathed, even before the monsters arrived. Between the freezing temperatures and the hidden books on the demons, it becomes clear that their time in the lighthouse was never the peaceful retirement Habd envisioned. But the most important part of this room is yet another journal by Ramati. This time it reads, "We finally did it. We bought the lighthouse. I thought Habd was just making idle promises all these years. What husband doesn't want to provide their wife the 2 moons from the sky? But I didn't think we'd actually manage to get it. Now if I could only find where we put everything. I can't find my favorite cooking pot, and it is slightly infuriating. Sudi and Manny seem unhappy, but they're still young and don't seem to understand that we just want to spend a few more years with them before they leave us to see the world. I know they think their father will live forever, but I see his age creeping into his eyes. He made me promise again that when he died, I would put his bones in the lighthouse fire so he could look out over the ocean forever. Oh, those two get to me sometimes. I went to unpack some of our keepsakes from the trading ships we used to sail, but I can't find them. Sudi keeps saying she's hearing something in the basement at night, and Manny suggested it was skeevers. They know I hate skeevers. Now I'm too scared to go down there at all. I'm glad I unpacked my favorite urn and put it safely on the mantle before those two started causing mischief. If they put a skeever in the basement, I swear. Ramati's words reveal a woman who was genuinely happy, believing that Habd had finally delivered on his lifelong promise to give her the 2 moons from the sky. To her, the lighthouse was the manifestation of that love. It makes the sight of her body in the main hall even more harrowing. She was killed in the very place she considered her greatest reward. Her complaints about missing cooking pots and keepsakes are yet again evidence that something other than skeevers were already creeping into the living spaces, stealing pieces of their lives before they eventually took their lives entirely. The most striking part of her story is the mention of Habd's final request. Long before the attack, Habd had already made a promise that when he died, she would burn his remains in the lighthouse fire so he could watch over the ocean for eternity. But it's incredibly sad that he was the one to witness her death before his. With the mystery of the lighthouse being more clearer, the focus shifts to the cellar. After retrieving the cellar key from the urn that Sudi mentioned in her journal, we move to the entrance where we encounter 2 doors. One leads upward to the roof where the great lighthouse fire sits, cold and dark. The other leads downwards. The floor around the cellar door is heavily stained with thick trails, immediately making it clear that this was the door where the tragedy follows its trail. As the door swings open, the faint warmth of the hearth is immediately replaced by a draft of damp, freezing air. Lighthouse's internal investigation is over. From this point on, we are no longer reading about the tragedy. We will be walking into the heart of it. There was this weird sound clicking through the halls earlier. After opening the door key, the sound becomes even more evident. The steps of the stairs leading down are heavily drenched in blood that leads directly towards the cellar basement. Reaching the bottom of the stairs, the source of the noise is finally revealed. 2 chorus skitter across the damp ice floor, their mandibles snapping in the dark. These are the creatures Sudi heard through the floorboards, the scratching that was so easily dismissed as mountain rats. In the dim light, the cellar reveals very little of its former life as a family storage space. Not much has happened here besides a massive breach in the wall. This is the point of entry. The lighthouse was not invaded through a door or a window. It was hollowed out from beneath. The hole leads into a frozen tunnel system that predates the lighthouse by centuries. It appears that while the family was focused on their new life above, a colony of Falmer was inhabiting a cavern directly beneath their feet. By building on this specific stretch of coastline, Habd had unknowingly placed his sanctuary on the roof of a hive. Entering the crevice on the wall, we venture into the frost flow abyss. Immediately, we see more bloodstains on the floor. Following this trail, we see the second victim near the central bonfire. This is the cold, abandoned body of Manny, which lies dead. Finding Manny here is particularly tragic because of what we know from his letter upstairs. He was skeptical of the family, the one who believed his mother was losing her mind and his sister was playing tricks. While he was secretly packing his bags and planning a daring escape back to the warmth of Hammerfell, the very threat he denied was tunneling towards his feet. He wanted to leave on his own terms, but was instead dragged out of his home in the middle of the night. and brought into this frozen pit. Unlike his mother, who was left in the main hall as a warning, Manny appears to have been treated as a little more than livestock. His body lies near the fire, suggesting he was killed quickly or was being prepared as a meal for the hive. For a young man who was so determined to strike out on his own and see the world, his journey ended less than 100 feet beneath the floor beds of the home he hated. Moving beyond the clearing where Manny fell, the environment shifts from frozen stone into a claustrophobic network of tunnels, choked with Farmer and Chorus. And moving deeper, we can find a room full of cobwebs and thick grey webbing. This is a sight that adds another layer to the twisted ecology of the abyss. In the world of the surface, these spiders are solitary predators, but within the influence of a Falmer hive, they become something far more organized and malignant. The Falmer and these arachnids have spent centuries domesticating the horrors of the deep, turning them into guardians and utility animals. The Falmer do not merely coexist with these spiders, they utilize them as a biological resource. The thick silk is used to create traps and structural support for their dwellings, while the potent venom is harvested to coat the jagged chitin blades and arrows that took Ramati's life. While the chorus are treated like heavy livestock or warhounds, the spiders act as the hive's alarm system. The victims brought down here aren't just killed, they are often preserved in silk, kept fresh for the hive to consume at their leisure. As you cut through the webbing and clear the room of its skittering inhabitants, the realization sinks in that this family wasn't just attacked. They were integrated into a food chain they never knew existed. The trail of blood continues through the silk-choked passages leading toward a section of the abyss that feels even more intentional and cruel. The trail of blood eventually leads behind a Falmer gate, where we encounter another heartbreaking scene. Sudi, the daughter, who had spent her final days listening to the walls of her home, lies dead. Unlike the others, she was not killed by a Falmer axe or a chorus bite. She is slumped on the cold ground, clutching a simple iron dagger. Beside her are two notes. One is a frantic scrawled page, and the other a final blood-stained goodbye. The first letter, the scrawled page, captures the terrifying moments following Hab's attempt to save his children. I don't know how long we've been down here. Father came down to find us, but those things captured him as well. I asked him if he had seen Mother or Manny, but I don't know if he could even hear me. One of those big bugs bit him when he tried to get free, and now he's feverish. Reading this, the timeline of the tragedy becomes clear. Hab did exactly what he promised in his journal. He locked the cellar door and descended into the dark to find his family. He found Sudi, but the rescue failed. The fever Sudi mentions is the result of the chorus venom, a slow, agonizing poison that causes delirium. Sudi's world had shrunk to the size of a cage, watching her father lose his mind while the clicking in the dark grew closer. The second note, stained heavily with blood, represents the final collapse of hope. They took Father. There had been some others they brought down, but they let them off, and all we heard were the screams, and now Father is gone too. Oh gods, why didn't I listen to Manny? Father's fever was getting worse and kept mumbling about Daedra. I don't know where he was hiding it, but I think I know why he left me this dagger. Sudi sat in the dark and watched as her father, still feverish and mumbling about Daedra, being dragged out of the pen. Before he was taken, however, he performed his final act of fatherly love. He gave her a dagger. In any other context, giving your child a weapon is an act of defense. But in the Frostflow Abyss, it was an act of mercy. He knew what the farmer did to their captives, and he wanted to give his daughter a way out that didn't involve the screams she was hearing from the next room. There is a staggering amount of pity in Sudi's final words, specifically her regrets regarding Manny. She spent too much time arguing with her brother and trying to stay loyal to her parents' dream that she ignored the reality of their situation until it was literally biting them. The dagger she held was the only thing she had left to control. She chose to use it on herself. rather than wait for the farmer to return. The farmer took Habd deeper into the earth, toward the heart of the hive. You now have a complete picture of the family's final hours. But the man who tried to be their light is still somewhere in the dark, and his final request remains unfulfilled. Deeper into the descent, the walls are no longer just ice and stone. They are encrusted with thousands of translucent egg sacs, pulsating with the movement of larvae that will eventually grow into the very monsters that tore this family apart. And at the center of this tragedy lies the heart of the hive, the sanctuary of the things that live in the dark. And it is here that the trail of blood finally stops, and the sound of mandibles is loudest. At the center of this nightmare is Chorus Reaper, a massive bloated insect with a shell as thick as iron and mandibles capable of snapping a man in two. It is 4 times the size of a standard chorus, moving with a surprising skittering speed that defies its bulk. As the beast finally falls, we search for Habd. Is he imprisoned? Is he dead? Where is his corpse? After searching the body of the Reaper, we get the final chapter of Habd's story. In the bowels of the insect, you find the man's mashed up remains along with his lighthouse key. Habd did not die a warrior's death, nor did he succumb to the fever in the cages. He was dragged down into the lowest pits of the world and consumed by the Reaper. But the ultimate irony is definitely finding the key to his home inside the stomach. He spent his life working to unlock a dream of peace, and in the end, the key was just another piece of debris swallowed by the dark. With Habd's remains in your possession, the path leads back toward the light. A small crack in the cavern walls allows for a steep climb out of the abyss, eventually looping back to the lighthouse cellar. From there, you return to the main hall, passing the body of Ramati and the journals of the children. You use the key found on Habd's remains to unlock the second door, revealing a ladder that leads to the summit of the tower. You step out of the damp, suffocating heat of the hive and back into the freezing, honest wind of the Sea of Ghosts. You are at the very top of the lighthouse, standing before the great flame. In accordance with his final wish mentioned in Ramati's general, you place Habd's remains into the fire. By fulfilling this ritual, you turn the lighthouse back into a beacon. Habd is finally where he wanted to be, watching over the ocean for eternity, serving as a guardian for the sailors who might otherwise fall victim to the same jagged rocks or the same hidden horrors that claimed his family. But Frostflow is just one pin on a map defined by these jagged stories. While this beacon stands as a warning of what happens when the darkness beneath the surface wins, the rest of the province's settlements are engaged in their own quiet daily struggle for survival. Behind every wooden palisade and thatched roof in Skyrim, there is a story, a secret, or a tragedy that the local Jarls would likely prefer you ignore. We've seen the absolute horror of a family isolated on the coast, but what happens when that weight is shared by an entire community? To truly understand this province, we have to look past the major cities and the grand palaces. We have to walk the dirt roads and sit in the smoky taverns of the places that don't get marked on the main trade routes. It's time to get off the lighthouse and head back to the main roads. We've investigated the solitary nightmare of the Sea of Ghosts. Now, let's look at the collective heart of the province. We are looking at the logic, the layout, and the lingering mysteries of the settlement. Because in Skyrim, the smallest villages often hold the biggest secrets.